This podcast is a proud member of the Unidentified Network.
So now, ladies and gentlemen, live and in colour, it's Mr. Wayne Lovejuice.
The other day I produced a Louis, had a chat with an interesting chappie who said that the YouTube algorithms really aren't that happy. If a channel only broadcasts once a week, so we've decided we can text ya whenever we've got a piece of news in our new book on the Track Extra. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Downs. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and welcome to another episode of On the Track Extra. For those of you who are not aware, every Wednesday evening at 6:30 for about quarter of an hour, and every Saturday afternoon at 3 for about twice that, we bring you a miscellany, a mélange, a mishmash, I can't think of other things beginning with M, but I'm sure there are some, of hard science, weird shit, and surreality. You want to know what surreality is? Well, ask the cat.
I'm not going to tell you because you're too stupid to understand.
The eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that in the previous piece I did introducing the show, I was wearing something that looked mildly like a velvet tabard as worn by a minor noble in the Holy Roman Empire. It's there behind me, if you can see. It's not actually a velvet tabard, and I'm not a minor noble in the Holy Roman Empire. But it was a Christmas present for me from dear Miss Judy and dear Miss Karen, and it's a heated padding thing that lubricates, I think the word is probably, my arthritic neck and avoids me quite a lot of pain, even though it does make me look as if I'm in fancy dress for some sort of Charlemagne look-alike competition. However, I think we need to go on with the show, because what we're going to be talking about this time is what is coming up in 2024. Enjoy. Well, first of all, those of you with long enough memories to remember last Saturday, and I realise that this is the festive season, and many of you will have been celebrating hard and long and not remember last Saturday, back in the days when I used to be a legendarily bad-behaved drinker. I remember one year that a friend of mine and I started drinking on the 4th of December and finally sobered up in the second week of January. And whilst this is not something that I would recommend to anybody, especially the younger and more impressionable of you, it is something which always gave me large amounts of amusement back in the day when destroying my mental and physical health was, to me at least, quite a jolly hobby. But for those of you who do remember last Saturday, there was a sighting of what was described by at least 3 of the witnesses as a dragon in Surrey. Now, a lot more has come to light about that, but we're not going to tell you any more about it until we have finished talking to the eyewitnesses and finished at least the preliminary stage of our investigation. But I can tell you it is going to be a very, very interesting report when it happens. Now, the next thing is that you will remember all the excitement surrounding Daniel Barnett's research group in Somerset and their work into a forest in northern Somerset where they have got some fascinating evidence suggesting that something of the Bigfoot kind is roaming around in that particular stretch of southwest England's woodland. As one has to admit, the idea of there being a flesh and blood Bigfoot type creature which can be defined purely by zoological terms in that part of the world is highly unlikely. But something is there, something has left exotic primate DNA and something is making footprints. And so I have deployed all the CFZ, in fact I think all but one of the CFZ trail cameras, in fact all but two, because one of them is actually in Sumatra at the moment, but all but one of the UK CFZ trail cams, I've deployed them with Daniel, and I've told him that if the drone he's just been lent doesn't work the way he wants it to, he can use our drone as well. But as I bought the drone on eBay for about 30 quid, I don't think it's going to be particularly useful, but one can always hope. And in the middle of this month, Daniel and his crew and various people, which may include me and maybe others of the CFZ contingent, and certainly will amongst CFZ people be including Richard and Jackie, will be going to the woods, will be deploying all the trail cameras and will be carrying out various experiments in the woods. If I'm there, I am not physically able to go up into the woods, but I am physically able to sit in the car park and interview people as and when they come out or in and out. And I am going to, even if I'm not there, I will have video footage from that day and will be able to report it to you here on a future version of On the Track. Future episode of On the Track. Now, what else have we got coming up this year? Well, recently we published the 2024/2025 yearbook. Have a look at it. It looks really rather cool, I think. And I want to go through the contents pages of it. So, glasses on. Page 5, Introduction. Well, I've been doing these CFZ yearbooks most years since 1995. And I'm not even going to attempt to try and work out how many of them I've done over the years, but it's been well over 20. And I am very proud that we are still doing what I always set out to do and providing a place for longer research papers and findings and results and expedition reports than there is normally room for within our journal Animals and Men. So it starts off with findings, analyses and opinions on a strange horn from Cambodia by Hans-Jörg Vogel. Hans-Jörg is an old acquaintance of mine, and within the German-speaking world he is probably my opposite number, as he is the boss of the largest mystery animal research group in the German-speaking world, and his analyses of various artifacts and specimens which he manages to get hold of are always interesting. Now we have an interesting thing here from Michaela de Mattei, and it's about the thylacine, and it's an article saying true believers see more patterns, and it's looking at how the same recognizable patterns do tend to turn up in thylacine research and when dealing with thylacine sightings. Then we have an interesting article by Chris Forbes and Raven Heather called The Usage and Expansion of Binomial Nomenclature. Very, very interesting stuff about the Latin names, the binomial names that have been suggested and which they suggest for various well-known and lesser-known cryptids. Then we have an article by one of 2023's most, the most controversial newcomers. She is a data scientist called Flo Foxon, and she uses data science to examine some of the preconceptions that have been made about mystery animals. And this one, which is called If It's There, Could It Be a Bear?, looks at the distribution statistically of Bigfoot sightings across North America and compares them with the sightings proving that there are North American black bears living in that particular area. Then we have, did the Smithsonian collect the Thunderbird bones in the late 1800s by Ken J. Gould? Another fascinating look at the likelihood that there are invaluable cryptozoological artifacts and pieces of evidence in museums around the world still awaiting discovery. This is followed by Richard Freeman, our very own zoological director and an old friend of mine who I've known for well over 25 years, and he looks at man-eating crocodiles in Borneo. Then we have David Scott, who is our Canadian representative, with an article about Fraser Valley in Canada, which is what he calls the other land of mystery. Then we have Chris Forbes and Raven Heather again with the most promising cryptozoological candidates for success in the near future by Chris Forbes, Raven Heather, and it looks at the cryptozoological animals most likely to be discovered. And it's nice that they agree with me and Richard that thylacine and Oran Pendek are amongst the most likely to be discovered, but they have some other ideas as well. Then we have Ulrich Megan, who is another old acquaintance of mine, somebody who I hold in very high esteem with his book The Monster of Lake Alta, Austria. It's a lake in Austria which has a long-standing monster tradition there. Then we look at a strange set of waterhorse sightings, or are they? Written by some bloke called Jonathan Downes, and it's about a little village in North Devon where I happen to live. Oh goodness, Jonathan Downes is me. And then we have an interesting reprint, I always like to do at least one reprint in the yearbooks, from 1897, and it's called The Great Fish Lizards by the Reverend H.N. Hutchinson. Then we have a two-part article about mystery giant salamanders of the world, and I've not even been drinking, but I can't pronounce that, by Shane Lee and Richard Muirhead. And it's a two-part article, fascinating stuff, and it even tells me about a new, or hitherto unknown by me, species of giant newt supposedly found in the Somerset levels, which is then just up the road from where I live. Then it's Richard Muirhead again with the index to issues 11 to 15 of Flying Snake, and it's followed by the CFZ Annual Report 2022 by me. I do the annual reports every year, and the 2022 one was the last that had been published by the time that we went to press for the yearbook. But I've done the 2023 annual report, and if you want to see it, you can see it in the link below, and that will be in the next issue of the yearbook, which will be coming out towards the end of 2025. If you want to buy a copy of the yearbook, you can find it at the link below in the show notes, together with the link to the annual report. Well, that's about it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found it useful. I'll be back on Saturday, and what am I going to be talking about on Saturday? Well, Bigfoot, I think, and we'll be returning to Canada for another one of the interviews which David Scott carried out recently with Robin Moonshadow. Thank you very much for everybody who helped with this episode, particularly my producer Louis and Graham Inglis, who looks after me. I want to please send out good wishes, healing vibes, etc. to Miss Maxine, who's still very ill after her recent visit to the hospital, and also to our old friend Lars Thomas, who is in hospital in Denmark. Please send out your good wishes and healing vibes to them both. I'm going to be back on Saturday, like I said, doing Bigfoot stuff. Are you listening, Mr. McCrinnan? But, Mr. McCrinnan, if you're listening, because I'm going to be there, not just doing the show, but I will also be doing the live chat and all the other stuff that I do on Saturday afternoons, Mr. McCrinnan. If you're there, and I'll be there doing all my stuff, and you're there watching it, I'll be seeing you.